Thank you all for coming today. We are very appreciative of you being here for our third Lunch and Learn of the year. I'm Todd Diefendorfer, the Deputy Director of the Department of Neighborhoods. Before we get started, I want to recognize the members of the Community Relations Commission in attendance here today. So when I saw Chair Kozad just came in. There we go. Sid Gross and Allison Poirier, so if you'll wave. We really appreciate their efforts to help make these events possible for all of us. Also appreciate our speakers for coming and being part of this important dialogue. This Lunch and Learn really is part of our effort as a department to shine a light on the protected classes that exist within Columbus City Code. We really want to offer these opportunities for learning, and then also an opportunity for all of us to gain new tools that we can use at home, at school, education institutions, otherwise in our lives to help make a difference in the community. Today's conversation is very much aligned with our work as in the Department of Neighborhoods to empower people to make a difference in their community. We recognize for there to be positive ongoing change, we need to have residents who are engaged and involved in making that happen. Our work as a department really offers a wide range of tools. We have the 311 Center, our neighborhood liaisons, our My Brother's Keeper work that's focused on addressing disparities that exist in the community, to working in Linden and the Hilltop on comprehensive plans to really help lift up people and the neighborhood for the future. And this work that we're doing here, the Community Relations Commission, is a key part of that work that we do. The Commission helps to impact issues of discrimination in our community through education, so thank you for being here as part of that work, and also through a process of investigating complaints of discrimination in the community. And pleased to share with you that we just went through a process to enhance how we approach the process to investigate complaints of discrimination. You have some more information in front of you on the table. So ask that you please spread the word. There's more information on our website as well to really get the word out that this is, in one hand, that these protections are available to everybody in the city of Columbus, and the Community Relations Commission stands ready to help people when issues come up. Now I would like to bring to the podium the chair of the Education Committee for the Community Relations Commission, Commissioner Poirier.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2019 Lunch and Learn series. This year, the Community Relations Commission presents Discrimination and the Truth Behind Trauma in Our Neighborhoods. I am Commissioner Poirier, and I am the chair of the Issue and Education Committee for the Community Relations Commission. I would like to take a moment to thank members of the Issue and Education Committee for all their hard work this year, so thank you very much. The committee, commission, and staff have one primary goal today. That is to provide us with skills through education so we can respond to trauma and discrimination. We hope to encourage people to think in terms of what happened to you, not what is wrong with you. For the next 2 hours, we will introduce skills and promote healthy dialogue. Cantor Jack Chomsky and Commissioner Imran Malik will guide us through an intriguing discussion, raising awareness around trauma and its relation to discrimination. The impact of trauma on our community manifests itself in many different forms. Today's session will enhance our ability to identify and address religious persecution. Thank you for joining us. We hope you benefit from the presentation, and at this time, it is with great pleasure that I turn the conversation over to Pedro Mejia.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pedro Mejia. I'm the investigator for the Columbus Community Relations Commission. I don't want to take too much of your time, but also just say thank you to everyone for being here and demonstrating the value of coming together as a community to learn about issues before they happen. So ideally, everybody in this room would eventually help put me out of a job. We accept complaints of discrimination when issues get to that point, but we also want to make sure that we are aware of the 12 protected classes that we have in the city of Columbus that we are lucky to have, and we want everybody to be aware of. So again, Todd had mentioned we are just recently released the new investigation process, and I would invite everyone to take a look on the City of Columbus website for more information on that. You can visit columbus.gov/neighborhoods. And again, thank you to all the commissioners for being here today. Won't take up too much more time. I'm going to now invite to the podium, and thank you for being here today for this important conversation, Cantor Jack Chomsky of Congregation Tifereth Israel.
Good morning, I guess it is. Our goal today is to contemplate some of the forces making it difficult for us to assemble confidently and comfortably in our places of worship or truthfully anywhere. When the conversation began about today's program and topic, Gail Gray, do you all know Gail? Because she hasn't been to the microphone, but she puts all of these together. Gail approached me about whether we might be able to bring some of those at the heart of what happened in Pittsburgh to visit with us. That wasn't really possible or practical, but Rabbi Jeff Myers of Tree of Life Congregation, the place that up to that time was the site of the worst attack, is a dear friend of 40 years standing, and I feel that I'm in position to convey much of what he would say if he were here, and add a few thoughts of my own. In the months after the Pittsburgh tragedy, Imran and I, and we're not sure where Imran is at the moment, but we've both been introduced, and hopefully he will be here. He was even supposed to speak first. Imran Malik and I led a group of Columbus Muslims and Jews to visit with a group of Pittsburgh Muslims and Jews who had been close prior to the attack and became even closer after, to quietly recognize the solidarity between the Muslim and Jewish communities in both places, and to contemplate how to ensure its continuity and growth. First, I want to share with you words that Rabbi Myers spoke to his colleagues last month when we gathered to present him with a special award recognizing his remarkable response when cast into an impossible situation. This is what he experienced and what we are all working together to guarantee to the greatest extent possible that we don't experience and that others won't. Jeff said, "Who could ever think that you would be put in a position where you tell a 911 officer that you think you hear footsteps? Take a moment to pause, to quietly recite the Shema and Vidui, and ask God to make it quick, debating in your mind, if you hang up on your only lifeline to the outside and possible safety, to record a farewell video to your wife and children." To explain some of that for a moment, Shema, to which he referred, is the declaration that according to Jewish tradition, we seek to recite just before we die, recognizing the oneness of God and the intimate relation between God and the Jewish people. It is what we believe that some of our heroes throughout history have had on their lips as they suffered a martyr's death, and many, many ordinary people as well. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. He also referred to the vidui. The vidui is the confession of sin so that we might leave this world blameless. It is traditionally recited at the bedside of a dying person. It is a central prayer of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, but actually part of Jewish prayer every day except Shabbat. This is what Jeff was thinking when he did everything he could to get people to safety, when he called 911, when he didn't know what was going to happen next. This is what any of us might face if an attack were to occur where we gather with our people. Let's take a moment to visualize that moment. When he spoke to us, Rabbi Meyer said, "Ultimately, God answered me, 'Jeffrey, it's not your time. I have things I need you to do. I sent 4 angels in the form of a SWAT team to rescue you.' Yes, he did survive, but he also had to conduct 11 funerals and deal with 11 shivas, 11 shloshim, and PTSD for an entire community. Shiva is the mourning period of 7 days following the burial of a Jewish person. Shloshim is a period of 30 days, not as intense as Shiva, but especially under these circumstances, a very difficult time. And unfortunately, I don't have to explain to you what PTSD is. Jeff also spoke to us about some of the things that we can and should do in our synagogues and our communities to prevent, or God forbid, prepare for events like he experienced. He said, "I offer the following for your consideration. 1, emergency plan. Your synagogue must have one to deal with fire, bomb threats, storms, and active shooter scenarios. 2, walk-through. Law enforcement will do a walk-through with you, frequently together with Department of Homeland Security and/or FBI, to identify security challenges and possible solutions, such as exits and entrances, outdoor lighting, video alarms, etc. 3, security. Here is not the time to debate the pros and cons. You know my answer. It's not 1962. Just do it. 4, our neighbors. We don't know our neighbors very well, as many Americans exist in standalone silos with no bridges. As one who lives in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood," he said, "I can unequivocally speak to the value of knowing our neighbors as people of various faiths and colors continue to reach out to us. Create Religion 101 courses with interfaith partners. Create a shared music concert amongst choirs. Bicycle ride to different houses of worship on different days. Sponsor an iftar. There is so much more. 5, fear. Some of our people are afraid. We need to talk about it. Connect with the mental health community and hold conversations. 6, reconnect. The best way to conquer the H word, as he calls it, in this world is by doing more good. Grow your adult education offerings with Hebrew for the rusty, Bible for the dusty, and prayer skills for the musty. You can translate that into your own religious tradition. Help our people reconnect. Let them help you reconnect. 7, self-care. This was directed at fellow clergy. I would say it applies to clergy and leaders of all faith traditions and leaders of other types of groups. Don't assume that you are okay. Seek out an appropriate mental health professional for a checkup. Even if you turn out to be okay, I'd rather be wrong with this suggestion than not say anything and sadly be right. Besides, the normal stressful role of a clergy person is quite a bit for any of us to handle. These then are the thoughts and recommendations of a colleague who stood at the center of a horrific attack on him, his congregation, and community, who fled as one must, but returned and has stood for and with his people and all people over and over and over in the months since October 27th. He added, Americans and people from around the world are victims. How do I know this? We have received probably more than 30,000 pieces of mail. I've tried to read all the ones addressed to me, as well as thousands upon thousands of emails, and the language is the same. Everyone who writes is a victim. Before we proceed to the next part of our program, and that will be after Imran has an opportunity to speak, processing the questions at your table, I'm going to take a few more minutes to respond to some of Jeff's suggestions. I'll start by telling you about who the Jews are here in Central Ohio, with some thoughts also about Jewish-Christian and Jewish-Muslim relations. Who are we? It is estimated that there are 25,000 Jews in Central Ohio. We are Orthodox, conservative, Reconstructionist, Reform, and also non-religious. There are about 10 congregations of various sizes, and although many of us live in Bexley, many live in Gahanna and New Albany, and ultimately every corner of the city and metropolitan area. We are left-wing, and we are right-wing in politics. We are straight and we are gay. In the progressive part of the community, which is the majority of the community, conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist, and not very interested Jews, homosexuals can be married in religious ceremonies and can serve as clergy in our congregations. We love Israel. Some will protect anything said about Israel and defend it every time. Some are trying to make a different Israel. We love it, and at the same time, it drives us crazy. It may remind you of life in the United States. Some don't care about Israel anymore. And for those of us trying to build a future for Israel and for the Jewish people there and here, that is a matter of real concern. One great thing to understand about Jewish tradition, in most ways, it enhances complexity. Though some religions will say, believe this, or the only truth is that, Judaism has, for over 2,000 years, allowed for contradictory points of view to stand side by side. This was the tradition of the ancient rabbis of the Talmud. Jews may not be aware that this is why we can often live somewhat comfortably with contradiction, but I believe that it is at the heart of the matter. Unfortunately, we live in a time where, despite the tools of communication being many times more powerful and faster and more widespread than ever before, there is a cultural tendency from both right and left to declare louder and louder simplicity, one form of correctness to the exclusion of the other. Even people among my complexity-loving co-religionists are too often guilty of this confusion. Understanding Christians. The hardest thing for us to understand about Christians, and for many Christians to understand about us, is that many white Christians have no idea what it's like to be a minority culture. We Jews have spent generations, centuries, seeking justice throughout the world, not just for ourselves, for everyone, in part, because we know what it means to be oppressed. Thank God we have, on average, been extremely successful in America over the last 75 to 100 years, but it is in our spiritual DNA to seek fairness for all. And we know from the history of the 20th century and the Holocaust, from previous centuries and their pogroms and mistreatments and lies about Jews, and sadly from the rebirth or failure to eliminate anti-Semitism, what it means to be declared the other and to live in real danger because of it. We don't celebrate Jesus Christ, Christmas, or Easter, and we are surprised that many Christians don't understand that. It makes many of us uncomfortable when we get together and the Christians end their prayers on behalf of all in the room with, "In Jesus' name." In time, I have come to understand that on a certain level, we have among Jews people who say in every sentence, "Be'ezrat Hashem," okay, with God's help. So I get the emotion a little bit. But when Christians say this for all of us, do they have any idea how much harm has befallen us at the hands of those who believe or believed in Jesus? On the other hand, the Jesus who inspires many, I dare say most Christians so deeply, is someone whose teachings often fit into eternally valued Jewish teachings. But when the theology moves into Son of God territory, we're on different pages. Understanding Muslims. On one level, many of our people don't understand Muslim culture at all because it is far from them and they don't know many or any Muslims. Those of us who have had experience feel a real closeness, in part because we're both minority cultures in this country. After the attacks on Muslim worshippers in New Zealand, I began to read a surah of Quran in English every Shabbat afternoon. For years, I have read next Shabbat's Torah portion on Saturday afternoons, and I continue to do so, but I thought it would be respectful to get much more familiar with the Quran. Where did I get my Quran? At the Noor Islamic Cultural Center, of course, at one of the numerous iftars I have attended over the years. Imran and I have been to each other's places repeatedly. Unfortunately, a number of those visits have come because of violence or threats received by one or the other. I've been here since 1982, and I'm thrilled to tell you that for most of that time, Muslims and Christians and Jews have sat together and worked together and learned together in many contexts. My congregation actually hosted our own iftar this past Ramadan. That was truly fruit born of many years of familiarity. It was the most natural thing imaginable. This is indeed the harvest of a lot of goodwill over a long period of time. I'll never forget the Shabbat after that attack in Pittsburgh last year, when Imran and his family and his community led dozens of people, Muslims and Christians, to join us on Shabbat. We had above average attendance from the Jewish community that day as well. And Imran presented us with flowers and letters from the children of his community. The power of that moment was multiplied when we went together to Pittsburgh. Having seen the closeness of the Muslim and Jewish communities there, we wanted to pay our respects and draw closer together here as well. Some months later, I found myself bringing flowers to the Islamic Center just a few doors down from our congregation after Friday prayers, the day that we learned of the horrific attacks in New Zealand mosques. When we know each other, when we protect each other, we can learn that it's okay for us to have different views, different visions, even different politics. That's something we need to teach not only the rest of the world, but the rest of the country. Too often we struggle with succeeding in embracing different points of view, even within our own communities. But I know that those of you who have chosen to spend time with us today are those seeking a better way. Later, I'll share some more thoughts about how we can visit each other and share one more particular powerful story from our history and maybe from yours about who succeeds and who fails. That's my opening remarks, and I'm thrilled to call my dear, dear friend Imran Malik to offer a view from his personal experience and from his community. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause to Cantor Jack Chomsky, please. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Walaikum salam. Peace be with you all, which is the exact same greeting as in Jewish faith tradition, shalom. First off, a pretty eventful day on my clock, so I'm sorry for being late here. I had to make a 25-minute drive here, so with some of the events that I can probably fill in you folks later here. I won't go into much of details as Jack went because it's going to be redundant to talk about the same stuff over. My remarks and my thought process was exactly, very much in parallel to his opening remarks here. I definitely want to take this opportunity to learn from you. We do a lot of work together, but at the end of the day, there are very few opportunities like these that are available to all of us to be in a cohesive environment and share our thought process. That's why I want to try my best to keep my remarks short, and then hopefully towards the Q&A session, we can get to know each other more. And if folks are still interested, we would definitely like to stay a little bit longer and exchange contacts and be connected. The idea is to bringing people in events like these and programs like these is not to have a one-time connection, but to build a relationship and synergy that can be a journey together moving forward. There's a lot happening. There's a lot happening not only in Columbus, Ohio, but around the globe. New Zealand, France, Canada, Denver, Las Vegas, Florida, Charlottesville, you name it. We all can point out at least one or two major events or tragedies that have happened both locally and globally and have impacted us directly or indirectly in many ways and form. What do we do next? That is the big question. And that is the purpose that we have events and activities like these that are happening in faith-based communities, as well as in cross-cultural communities, as well as in communities in general, whether they're faith-based or non-faith-based. The purpose is to bring people together. How do we build bridges? For a moment, it seems like the people with the negative energy has the biggest microphone, and that is true. And you keep hearing those echoes over and over, and it seems like the world is coming to an end. But is that really true? Just as my friend and my mentor and my counterpart, Cantor Jack Chomsky, just mentioned, the outpour of love and support that comes our way each time there is an event or tragedy that impacts humanity or any faith community in general, it's massive. But unfortunately, all those gestures of kindness, support, care, and affection often at times do not get the spotlight. Why is that? We can talk about that in the Q&As, but my focus here is how do we move forward? And my brothers and sisters and friends in this room and beyond, empathy. Empathy is the only way we can move forward. Yes, we have inherited the world in a pretty massive chaos, but is that the way we want to transfer this world to our next generation who are the members of the global village? There's an African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. We all have to become that village. We all have to be members, leaders, supporters of that village community so we can train and prepare our children and our younger generation to become the future of that new cosmopolitan world. It's not going to be easy, but it is the need of the time. According to some of the reports that come out on global population, the world population is going to double in about 40 to 50 years. We are 7.5 billion people currently, as the clock is ticking, on this planet. Imagine 15 billion people around the globe. What is the way? What is the alternative? How to feed them, how to employ them, and how to make sure that each and every member of the global community is going to have a healthy and prosperous life. So what we do today is going to impact what's going to happen in the future. That's why I go back to an old saying that says, think global, but act local. And it is through our individual and collective outreach and building connection and through empathy and affection for each other that's going to rectify the xenophobia and the fear of the others. Columbus is a great city. The Muslim population in Columbus, Ohio has a very large footprint. There are 75,000 Somalis in this area, which makes Columbus the second largest hub for Somali community after Minneapolis, where the numbers are reported as high as 150 to 180,000 immigrants from Somali descendants. We have other populations of Muslim background that come from Morocco all the way down to Indonesia, which is about 28 different countries. That makes up about 30 to 35,000 additional Muslims in this area. So a total footprint of about 115 to 120,000 Muslims call Columbus as home. The immigrant community is definitely not a liability to the local community. So we have to make that more transparent and clear. We bring a lot of resources, professional, entrepreneurship, as well as services that we have experienced in other parts of the world, and we kind of integrate them into our host communities as well. So there are a lot of taboos, there are a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of misconceptions. We can definitely clarify those in our Q&A sessions. But my focus here is going to be today talking about empathy, because that is the only way forward. What is empathy? Empathy comes from the Greek word, which is composed of two consonants, em and pathos. Em means into, and pathos means experience of other. So what does empathy mean? To experience others. And that is the only way forward that humanity can work together. Because unless and until I understand what is the need of my next door neighbor, my community member, my colleague, my friends, my kinship, my fellowship, I'm not going to be able to understand how to address that. That is the way to rectify, again, the xenophobia, the fear of the unknowns, the fear of the strangers, the fear of the foreigners, which unfortunately has taken over our minds and our thought processes, and our decision-making in many ways informed, because the social media and the media in general does not help the situation either. Painting 1.5 or 1.7 billion Muslims around the globe with one paintbrush is not fair. Many of us probably don't even know that the most populous Muslim countries in the world are Indonesia and Malaysia. It's not any of the Middle Eastern countries. Of that 1.5, 1.7 billion Muslims around the globe, only 10 to 15% of them call Middle East as their home. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about. We definitely don't want to get into the political science subject matter here, but we definitely want to focus on the opportunities, how we can work together and make Columbus a sample city that can be mimicked or that can be duplicated in other parts of the world and country as well. Columbus happens to be definitely a test bed for food market for America. So if the food that is successful in Columbus can work in the other parts of the country, why not the community building and relationship building? That is the motto here that we will be talking and focusing more on. And one more thought process I want to also add on, as Jack was mentioning, the Muslim community, like any other immigrant community, is not immune to issues and challenges. We look upon to our counterparts and our brothers and cousin faith traditions of Judaism, because they have been gone through the same levels of challenges and issues as being the new kid or the most recent kid on the block. The Muslim community has been here in Central Ohio since late 60s. We have second and third generation Muslims, families who actually came to Ohio State as students or entrepreneurs in many way and form, and decided to anchor here and call Columbus as their home. It is a bicentennial city. I was reading up just not a while back that the initial population 200 years ago of Columbus was only 1,800 people. And within 200 years, now we are the largest county in Ohio, or Midwest, I would say, with over 1 million people in Franklin County and its periphery. Definitely, there's a lot to learn from each other. I believe that there's strength in our diversity, and that is the way forward, because we have to prepare our children to be not growing up in silos of professionalism and culturalism, but we have to introduce them to multiculturalism and global world. And my friends, thank you for joining here today. And again, as I mentioned, I look forward to hearing more from you and learning from you, rather than making it a one-way traffic of just myself and Jack speaking. But again, we want to have a cross dialogue and cross-learning opportunity from all of you. Thank you, and I look forward to our Q&A sessions.
thank you, Cantor Chomsky and Commissioner Malik, for your introductory remarks. As Commissioner Malik mentioned, today really is about building relationships, bridging gaps, and coming together as a community. So if you take a look at your agenda for a moment, you'll notice that we have so conveniently placed you into groups of 4. For the next 15 to 20 minutes, we'll be engaging in a conversation among one another. And on the back of your agenda, you'll notice that we have some breakout questions, and these are really just to guide the conversation. Feel free to allow the conversation to go wherever it goes naturally, but we wanted to provide something to get you started. Some of the questions include identifying a hateful situation or conversation or two that you may have been present in. Unfortunately, this may not be an uncommon situation for most of us. Did you change the direction of that conversation, and did you succeed? What would you like to know about other religions? And if you would like to do so, do you know where you could go to make that happen? And lastly, what can you do to stop religious persecution in our city? During this time, I would also invite you to begin to think about some questions that you may have for our presenters. After we reconvene, the presenters will have a few minutes to kind of expand upon some of their thoughts and some of the ideas that they've heard at the conversations around the room. After that, we will have the Q&A session. If you are interested in asking a question, just a few things to remember. Because today's session is being recorded, we will have to come to the microphone. Please state your name and keep your questions short and simple so that we can get to as many as possible. And we're really looking forward to that. So for the next 15 to 20 minutes, please begin to get to know your neighbors who you're sitting next to, talk about some questions. And when you see me up at the podium again, that means it's time to move on. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so sorry to have to interrupt what I have walked around and heard to be incredible conversations, and thank you for engaging in them. We would like to offer, moving into our next session, we'd like to hear back before we hear from our presenters. Their request was that we hear from a couple members of the audience about the conversation that you just had. We have a microphone to the left of those cameras over there. And if any individual at this point in time would like to come and speak about the conversation that they just had, we would invite that. Please keep your comments brief so that we have time to move on to the next. Yes, we would like.
I'm the bad guy, and I will pull you away from the microphone.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm Minister Kujenga Lyle Shea. I work with Concerned Lending Clergy, Baptist Ministers Alliance, and the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance of Columbus and vicinity. We talked about, Brother Jindal, the ancient Hindu Kush religion being for everyone. We also talked about the commonalities in different religions. And also basically, we said that we need to have some type of religious gathering together where all of the faiths can come together, join hands together, Muslim, Christian, Jews. You know, in the black church, we've had the killing in 2015 at the Allen AME church, and 9 people were killed there by the supremacists, white supremacists. But not very much was done, not very much was said. But now it's spreading all over the world. You know, so it's time, I think, now that we can join hands and pull together. We would like to work with the interfaith group. Brother Mark is there. We have the Catholic, Pam Harris is there from the Catholic Church. Brother Jindal from the Indian Hindu religion. So we'd like to get something together. And if you would like to do something, come see us after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
That or we wait?
Sure, if you'd like.
All right. I just want to add a quick comment to that. You know, there are a lot of opportunities both in the greater central Ohio and the suburban Ohio or Columbus where people from different faith, different cultures are getting together and trying to add value on a daily basis. Now, whether it can be a large event like the Interfaith March that's going to be happening this year on September 22nd, or whether it's like small collective efforts to do food drives or serve at a soup kitchen where people from all walks of life, faith as well as unfaith, traditions come together and do work. The idea is, again, to stay connected, get engaged, and get to know your community. And that's only going to happen when you create dialogue. Oftentimes we discount the dialogue so much that we don't feel like a conversation is needed, but you will see that miracles happen when you start conversating. And especially when you focus on the synergies and overlaps rather than the differences, your conversation will go way beyond. That is the way we have been so successful in our interfaith partnership and alliance building, is that we focus on our similarities. We focus on our synergy points rather than finding out differences of cultures, of values, of practices, of worships and rituals. We ignore all that. That is the beauty of the community in Greater Columbus area, is that we focus so much on our humanity. And our humanity and our service has to be bigger than anything else. That is the only way we can move forward and build this stronger city model here in Columbus. So I just want to re-echo that, what we had a conversation.
I'm going to also play a little tag on that, because you really called for getting people together, and one of the things I was going to tell you about today is Sunday, October 27th. So you can make a note on your calendar. Sadly, that is the one-year anniversary of the attack at Tree of Life in Pittsburgh, but we're using that opportunity in our community to bring together churches, synagogues, mosques. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, we're going to have a concert celebrating the stuff that brings us together. And so Imran is already part of those conversations. Jeff Key and people from the New Faith Baptist Church, Tim Aarons and people from First Congregational Church. So we hope you'll join us that day. It'll be a sad day on some levels, but when we all come together, and at the end we're all going to sing together, if you can imagine that, bringing those faith traditions together. So there's work to be done, but there's also singing to be done.
Thank you, Cantor Chomsky, for noting that event coming up. At the end of today's session, we will be asking everyone to take a look at the back side of their agenda. At the very bottom, you'll notice that there's a place for you to insert your name, email address, contact information, so that if you are interested in learning more about other interfaith events and initiatives within the city of Columbus, go ahead and leave that on your table at the end of today, and you will be put in touch with the folks who are representing those organizations and initiatives. We'll take one more comment about the conversation, then we'll have some more follow-up.
There's two people standing. Let's take the
Sure.
two.
And then we will have a question and answer session near the end as well. So if you're not in line right now, please know that there's more time to ask questions near the end. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gloria Phillips, and I'm with Christ United Methodist Church, but I'm also a member of the Bread organization. And just to tout that a little, it is an organization that has helped me to embrace and understand some of the 50 religions, churches, and churches that it has exposed me to and I have visited. But my question is, when presented with different religious viewpoints, what is a better or different way to be with someone and hear what they're saying to solve or maybe diffuse the situation because you disagree with them? And the second part is, what can we do with our children now to get them more exposed to the differences in religions and start them at an early age?
Go ahead. All right, so a quick rebuttal or a quick answer to that would be, definitely we have to focus on changing our middle school curriculum. I, again, don't want to get too much into that discussion, but kind of at a higher level, we are already working with the ESCs of many different counties and states, where we are trying to focus on bringing multiculturalism, multi-religious understanding and in the academics of middle school. Often a time when we are trying to focus on making the learning easy for college students, that is sometimes a little bit too late to make them more exposed to the diversity and globalization that's happening around. So I think what the majority of the leaders around the faith communities have focused is that we have to focus on changing the middle school curriculum, because that is the very basic ground where you can start exposing children to, again, diversity of faith, diversity of cultures, and diversity of so many other things that are all around America. And that is not limited to America anymore, but it's now a global concept. We have to make that cosmopolitan vision induced into our curriculum, especially starting from the middle school onward. So hoping that if we can start taking those steps in the right direction, the next generation will probably have an easy way into a globalized world that we envision or we are living through right now. That is one aspect. The other is, again, going back to the comment that I previously made, is focus on the similarities. All faith traditions at some point or at some level of their core values focus on services to humanity. That is what we have to synergize upon when we are having conversations from people from other walks of faith traditions or culture traditions. And once we start focusing on those collective efforts that bring people together, then the differences that you feel like, whether there are differences in their rituals or the way they worship or the way they act for their different events and the traditional activities, that all get very, very minute in that bigger spectrum of things. So again, my focus will be focus on service, focus on collectivism, and focus on empathizing with each other. That is the only way you will be successful. The success stories of our interfaith relationship goes beyond Central Ohio, and it is through these acts of working together, bringing people together, not on faith basis, but on basis of serving to others. We have very examples of profound miracles that we have happened in Central Ohio. In suburban areas, in greater Columbus area, we have already created interfaith dialogue and interfaith organizations. My friend Barb Anderson, she's sitting right behind you. She is the current president of Safe Alliances of Interfaith Leaders in suburban Ohio, which serves the interfaith community and interfaith dialogue and work in Hilliard, Dublin, Westerville, Powell area. Then we also have WIN, which is the Worthington Interfaith Neighbors, that is doing a similar work more in Upper Arlington and Worthington area. And then we have a new organization that is also following the footsteps of SAIL and WIN called EPIC, which is called East Side Partner Interfaith Community, that serves the community in Reynoldsburg and Bryce Road and East Broad Street and all those vicinities. So as you see, one noble act kind of enkindles other, one noble outreach is going to also enkindle other outreach and collective efforts as well. So I hope I rambled enough on this one. Did that answer your question?
What about Rabbi Chomsky?
I completely disagree. No, Imran spoke beautifully. The only thing I would add is that in terms of children, one opportunity is go to the library, go to the bookstore, find children's books that tell about other traditions. And also, if you're fortunate to be a grandchild, or a grandparent, or if you're a parent of small children, consider exploring another place of worship sometime. Find out about, is it okay for me to come at this time, at that time, and go. And it probably is a great opportunity to teach more deeply about your own tradition once you've viewed another tradition in a positive way.
I am Apostle Natalie Young, the Remnant House Living, Inc. Our discussion was more about how do we feel safe in our own churches, synagogues, places of worship. The cultural divide, I think, is deeper than race or religion. Even now in black churches, there are ministers that don't want women to preach. So we're still in that same game, no matter what ball we play with, and we need to know how to stay safe in an environment where people are so opinionated.
Take that. You want to take that?
If you're ready to go on it, I'll correct you.
My quick focus on that comment would be that, again, let's not wait till a tragedy or an event to happen before we come together. Let's celebrate our humanity and our similarities on routine basis. opportunities like these, where we come from all different colors, all different walks of life, whether it's like in cultural, religious, or non-religious values, we all are sitting here together in this room because we are all concerned about things happening not only locally, but globally. So the idea is the more that we can connect with each other, the more we can understand each other, where different perspectives might be very siloed, but given a platform like this, they can synergize together. I think that's what we need to focus on. And again, going back to my opening remarks, activities and events like these are happening massively, throughout Columbus, throughout United States, but unfortunately, it's not getting the right attention and right focus and platform. It's our job. It becomes incumbent upon us to make sure that everybody is aware of all the positives that's happening. We had our fair share of hate mail, racial discrimination, comments and postal mails and threats of rallies to be happening around Nur Islamic Culture Center. But the beauty was the interfaith community of Central Ohio, their leadership and their constituents came around and stood outside Nur Islamic Culture Center saying a threat to Nur is threat to all interfaith partners. Now, these relationships don't happen easily and overnight. You have to work on it. You have to invest time, you have to invest synergies, and you have to bring people together. And again, we don't have to wait until something negative happens. There are a lot of great programs and activities of building resiliency into Columbus community, and especially into the political leadership of Columbus happening at Columbus Bar Association as well. A lot of those initiatives are happening, but unfortunately, because of our busy schedules and lack of engagement, sometimes we do not pay too much attention to those events and activities. So we all have to make sure that we are connected. Engagement, engagement, engagement.
So I would add, regarding women, we have a sense of needing to listen more deeply and more patiently, more seriously to the voices of women in every corner of our culture, perhaps more so even in religious culture. I'm looking around the room, there's a lot of women here today. That may tell us something about who's interested in listening. We learned that our whole life. What? I recognize that. But I also have learned in community organizing over 35 years, the powerful voice often speaks last and in a short way. So in the situation that you describe, where there are clergy that you're describing who do not want to hear from women, it may be that at some point you have to say, I can't accept that, period. You may need to leave the room. I think that you've probably gone to your own room. But each of us needs to know that this challenge is in front of us every day in every way. And if we make progress on it, we're going to be doing a lot better. I think that that many cultures and many governments have been run primarily by men forever. How's that working out?
Okay, I will be brief, just to add, I think, some important information that hasn't been said yet. The oldest interfaith organization in Central Ohio is the Interfaith Association Central Ohio, IACO. And I serve on the council as well as a couple of other people present here today. It's made up of 9 faith traditions. The mission of IACO is to create an interfaith community based on understanding, friendship, and trust. I think pretty much what we're talking about. Coming up on August the 18th, we're doing an interfaith program, our main event at the Bethel International Methodist Church on Bethel Road, and it's going to be on civility and looking at interfaith perspectives and not only what our faiths teach us, but how we put it into practice. Invite all of you. The march is something we support and help run at this point in September. So we do a lot of programming. We could do a lot more. It is really building the relationships, and our group really talked about that. That it's not only what we have in common, but it's also appreciating the differences. We love having interfaith dinners because food is a wonderful sharing, and different rituals around eating is a wonderful sharing. So it's getting to know each other, and that's how we build friendships, and once we build friendships, we start building trust, as seen here today. And once you build trust, then people show up for each other. They care about each other, and in fact, whatever hostility, discrimination, and other bad things that happen in our community, we come together, join together, and we fight together. So thank you very much for being here.
Good afternoon. Barb Anderson from SAIL. Thank you, Imran, for mentioning SAIL. Imran is one of the co-founders of SAIL way back, I don't know, several years ago with Father Stephen Smith from St. Patrick's Episcopal Church in Dublin. So I'm just honored to be a part of SAIL and follow in his footsteps of what he and Father Stephen started. Also in Dublin, we have a group that I facilitate at my church, which is Dublin Community United Church of Christ, called WORD, Women of Religious Diversity. So we meet every Friday morning, September through May, do biblical studies, do various book studies, book discussions. We have 40 to 45 women every Friday morning of the Catholic, Protestants of various denominations, and women of the Muslim faith, primarily from TASO, Turkish American Society of Ohio, which is in Dublin. It has been the most enriching experience I have ever had in my faith life. And we very much have the expectation in that group that we come together to learn from each other, to be in dialogue with each other. We do not shy away from our differences. I was glad that Karen mentioned that as well. We do discuss what we are different from, how we are different from each other. We discuss that because that is a part of who we are. But we can learn so much from each other by discussing those differences, but always in a respectful, non-judgmental, without any agenda of conversion from anyone in the room. That's spelled out right at the beginning of every session that we do. We are trying to engage with our Jewish synagogue in Worthington to have someone from there come to give the Jewish perspective as well, so we're working on that. But it's just become a wonderful, I would just encourage, if you're at all interested in that in your church or in your community of faith organizations, just talk to me about starting one. We don't necessarily want 75 women coming to our church for Word. We want other Word groups to be in the community and to be alive and well and function. And we have had some more conservative Protestant denominations in our community whose women have come, and that is not the place for them because they cannot be in the room without having the agenda of conversion, which is very disappointing. It is where they are, and they are where they are. We're probably not going to change their minds, but we do not want that to happen in the room that we are in with women of religious diversity. So, or have a men's group. We have men of religious exploration also in our church, which is called MORE, which is not as diverse, but they still have a great discussion. So talk to me. Imran has my information, so I don't really have a question. I just have a challenge for you to encourage that to happen in your own communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. And I was while the next person on the podium is making their way, I just was going to say, our request to each and every one of you is that don't leave without actually making a connection with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people today in this room. Make that connection happen. Follow up by coffee, socializing, or lunch or dinner. Make the connection happen, and you will see that you probably in a month or 2 you will be in a different position than where you are today. So build that connection today, please.
So earlier, in my first set of long remarks, I promised you I had one more important story to share, and perhaps this will be an exclamation point on what we've done today. This is an old Jewish story. You may know a similar story from your own tradition, so I'm going to ask you, do you recognize this story when I'm done? But this Jewish story is attributed to Rabbi Chaim Rumschisker. I didn't know who that was. But This is his story. Once I went up into the sky and also entered hell. I looked around and saw old and young men sitting rows upon rows in front of tables that were full of the best things, all the best things, each holding a long spoon in hand. And when one reached for his mouth, he wouldn't be able to because of the spoon's length. And so they all sat row against row with their souls dry, and a great sorrow rested on their faces. I went over to one of them and said to him, "A fool in the world, rather your eyes seeing all this goodness and craving, send the spoon that is attached to your hand and support your friend who sits opposite you. And he will, in turn, support you with the spoon attached to his hand." The man looked at me with meager eyes and replied, "It would be better for my eyes to see and crave all day long than for me to see him enjoy and be satiated." I was alarmed to hear this. So I opened my mouth to scream a loud scream and woke up. Now, how many of you know some version of this story? Okay? I see the Jewish people raising their hand. Maybe the others don't. Interesting. Friends, we are living in a time of long spoons, where people would rather bang each other over the head with spoons than work together to find the sumptuous rewards we could have together. Consider, where do you worship? With whom do you hang out? If you find that you are surrounded by people who hold others not like you in contempt and can find no path to work together with all the utensils we have available, you need to open your mouth, scream a loud scream, and wake up. Maybe you'll even be able to wake up your neighbors. So that's a Jewish story, but I suspect, in my reading, it also said it was inspired by the fables of Aesop, okay? And I think it's all of our, as you said, you talked about what all religions do is help the world. So we need to make sure that, that we are like this in the world and not like this. So thank you so much for coming out this afternoon.
Thank you so much. This concludes today's event, and we want to thank you again for coming out today and being an important part of the educational series that the Community Relations Commission seeks to provide to the community at large. Just a few last-minute notes. Once again, thank you to Vice Chair Commissioner Imran Malik and Cantor Jack Chomsky of Congregation Tiferet Israel for being here today. One round of applause for our presenters. Today was the final of the 2019 Lunch and Learn series. It's something that we do every year, and this year we took a specific look at our protected classes. Earlier this year, we had a conversation on the LGBTQIA community, especially as it concerns youth. A few weeks ago, we talked about national origin and the effects of migration on individuals in this very room. And today, on International Refugee Day, we talk about the persecution of religion. And I do believe it is important to bring up today, June 20th, that is International Refugee Day, because of the fact the definition of a refugee inherently means that in some way you are being persecuted against in such a way that causes you to flee from your home. That's something that we wish upon nobody and something that's difficult for a lot of us to imagine. And one of the main reasons that individuals are persecuted and forced to become refugees is because of their religion. So thank you today for becoming part of an educational series so that we can learn and try to avoid these tragedies before they happen. I'd like to give a special thank you to Gail Gray and Commissioner Allison Poirier. They have put on this series for a great deal of time, and we don't know what we would do without them. Once again, thank you, everybody. Feel free to visit us online at columbus.gov/neighborhoods. You can check out the other programming that we'll have there for the rest of the year. And feel free to stick around as we have our presenters stay around for just a few more minutes. Thank you again, everybody. And feel free to leave your contact information on the pieces of paper and leave them if you'd like to learn more about interfaith initiatives in Columbus.